The Clemson Tigers have a quarterback battle to figure out, and they're going to need some of those impact transfers to truly hit.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Into this crossover of Locked On Clemson and Locked On the Portal. I'm your host, Brian Smith, along with Morgan Thomas, longtime Clemson guy, double grad. So we're going to get all things orange down there in the state of South Carolina. Thank you for coming on to the show, my friend. We're going to talk about what the fans think of what's going on in Clemson. It's been a weird year and a half. We're going to talk about some of the transfers, but most importantly, to start the show, Morgan, we're going to talk about the quarterback situation. I have no idea how to summarize where it's at yet because what little I've read is just it's a battle. I doubt Dabo is going to give a whole lot of information. I mean, I don't blame him. But let's start with you. What is your take of Christopher Vizzina, Tait Reynolds? Like, I've seen him play at the Rivals 5-star about a year or so ago. I did not envision him coming in immediately and competing for a starting job at Clemson. But where do you think this situation stands?
Well, I mean, it's kind of exciting to talk about and speculate, but we all know Dabo Swinney. He's going to go with the veteran guy. A lot of people pick on Dabo for being loyal, but Christopher Vizzina has been at Clemson for multiple years now. It's kind of his chance, and that's how Dabo really runs things. I mean, he was himself a higher up recruit. Wasn't a 5-star guy, but he wasn't a scrub by any means from Alabama. So Christopher Vizzina is next in line, and I believe everybody knows that he will go to Baton Rouge and play that game and be the starter. And that's kind of a big concern because it's like, wow, that's a big time road SEC matchup. First week, there's no tune-up game this year. And so he's going to have to go out and perform, and he's really never been a multi-game starter or been the man. Now, he did come in for Cade Klubnik last year when Cade rolled his ankle really bad, and he played against SMU, and he had over 300 yards passing and multiple touchdowns. They lost the game, but it really wasn't his fault. But when you look back at that game, SMU was one of the worst pass defenses in the country. So the fact that he had a good game is kind of lost a little bit on the fan base because they're like, well, hey, anybody could throw against that team. So, you could support him in that way. But the idea is that he will come out at the beginning. We don't believe that Tait Reynolds is going to start this season at all. I mean, like you said, that was not the anticipation at all. But in his mind, I mean, he is a competitor. And he has got a lot of talent. And honestly, when you look at Christopher Vizzina, not to knock his weight room ability or his gym ratness, I guess you could say, but Tait Reynolds is ripped and he looks, he's buff and he looks like he's not afraid of throwing the weights around. Christopher Vizzina is more like the Tom Brady guy. Like he's not really throwing weights around a ton. Maybe Tom Brady, like early Tom Brady, not like, more athletic Tom Brady, but Vizzina is confident in his own skin. And so you do like that from him. I do believe that Christopher Vizzina believes in himself, and you need that confidence. And one thing I do like about Christopher Vizzina is that he's not Cade Klubnik in the fact that he never really gives me these vibes that he needs to play hero ball. We saw Cade try to play the hero so much, and it hurt them. Now, a lot of Clemson fans are going to be screaming at me right now by not mentioning this, but Vizzina was behind Klubnik for multiple years, never really pushed him, never really beat him out. So you're telling me that he's now the starter but couldn't beat out the guy who only won 7 games. That's where some more frustration comes in. So what I'll tell you is the statement of the fan base is hopeful for sure, skeptical definitely.
Unfortunately, I think you kind of summarized what I expected you to say because you used logic. Hey, this guy won 7 games last year as a senior, and you didn't come close to beating him out. That doesn't look right based on what the history of the last 15 years of Clemson have been. They've only had a couple of years where they weren't really good. And like last year, they had 9 guys drafted, Klubnik being one of the guys that, drew some interest, but he was just so inconsistent in big moments. He'd make an unbelievable play. Then he would turn around and just lay an egg. I think his worst game he ever had was a couple years ago when they played at Miami, when they played a true freshman at quarterback, and he had just multiple boneheaded plays. I just can't believe some of the things that he let off the table. Duke game, like there was just so many times he would struggle in the red zone because he tried to play, as you said, hero ball. Tell me what would be a successful season for Vizzina, because to be honest, I would assume he's going to be more clutch than Cade was, and I'm not trying to pick on him, but he just wasn't clutch.
Yeah, and that's like you said. I mean, Cade is a good guy. You would want Cade to date your daughter. That's the kind of guy he is. I mean, he's just a good but he's also kind of I always said Cade needed to have a bad breakup. Cade needed to go get some tattoos that he regretted. Cade was just a little bit too much of the apple polisher kid. He was the teacher's pet. He was just he wasn't going to do anything wrong, and you loved that about him. You could trust him, but he also wasn't going to do anything that was going to be like to a elite level like we really were expecting. Now, you asked me about Christopher Vizzina. Honestly, to me, I know this is not the flashy answer, but he needs to be the game manager. He needs to play clean. He needs to be in command of the offense. Obviously, not turn the ball over like you said Cade would do. I don't expect him to make some amazing throws like Cade would do here and there, but I don't need him to do that. Under Chad Morris, they brought back Chad Morris. They're going back to the past for the future. I don't even know how I'm going to swing that one or fix that, but they're going back to what worked in the past to hopefully work for the future. And Chad Morris is a guy who I do believe that we trust to understand and work well with Dabo Swinney and what Dabo wants out of an offense. And I do think that when you look at the past Chad Morris Clemson teams, he was very good at getting the ball in the right guy's hands, whether it be DeAndre Hopkins or Sammy Watkins or any of the other guys that he had. So we're looking forward to that. Christopher Vizzina just needs to play his role. He doesn't need to be the hero. He doesn't need to be Trevor Lawrence or even any of these elite quarterbacks. Really, as you mentioned, you're from Alabama. I mean, there were plenty of superstar mega Alabama teams that kind of had just average quarterbacks, and so maybe we're looking forward to that. Clemson has some weapons on offense. We really like our wide receivers. We like the tight ends. We actually like the running backs, so all he needs to do is get the ball in their hands and not be not hurt the team, just try to find ways to help the team and get the ball out of his own hands, if that makes sense.
Well, if they can figure out quarterback and at least make some improvements in critical moments, some of those close games could go from the L to the W, and that's the bottom line. Winning 7 games at Clemson's not acceptable. I'm curious to see what the fans think, but we'll get into that next. I want to talk about the transfer portal, some players that Morgan thinks can help the Tigers improve. That is next right here on this crossover. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There are more live events than ever we're seeing right now. Games, concerts, comedy shows, all kinds of festivals. The hard part isn't finding something to go to. It's actually finding the way to get the tickets without all the hassle, confusing checkout processes, and all the different things that come along with it. That's why so many fans check out Game Time, like myself, the app that is built for buying tickets and making it simple. Upfront pricing, being able to see your seat view from your phone, it makes it easier. In the last year, I bought twice from Game Time. Basketball tickets both times, found the game I wanted in less than 8 minutes. I found it, found the seat, got checked out. Very, very simple on Game Time. Download the Game Time app to get create an account and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Continuing our conversation here with Morgan Thomas, Locked On Clemson insider, living right down the road. You're a double grad. I'm sure you're ready for some change. And I about fell over, speaking of change, when they hit double digits on transfers. I'm sure there were volcanoes erupting near Clemson, South Carolina, and everything else. Clemson Tigers taking a bunch of transfers. How many of them do you think Morgan can make an impact that truly helps him change the win-loss record?
Oh man, well, I hope all of them. How many? I mean, like you said, Dabo, for the most part, he always said, "Oh, we just didn't have room for it." He wasn't against the transfer portal; he just didn't have room for it. But to be honest with you, that was kind of not. I don't want to call him a liar because I love Dabo, but that really wasn't true because he was making calculated moves to keep players and not have spots. So he was doing things on purpose with his roster to not have spots for transfer portal players. He was taking in more fringe recruits to not have transfer portal options. And so while yes, you could say, "Oh, well, we're not against the portal. We just didn't have room." Well, that's true, but you were the reason you didn't have room. So now he's kind of backed away from that and said, "Hey, you know what? We need experience. We can't keep losing experience and replacing it with an 18-year-old." I mean, we all knew that that wasn't going to be sustainable. Dabo's just a little bit of a laggard when it comes to changing, but he also is a guy who he's not going to do just the flashy new thing. He wants to evaluate it, analyze it, and think it through. It really made it frustrating for all of us because we're like, wow, everybody else has already moved on to this new way, and you're still just kind of dragging your feet. It seemed like dragging feet to us. To him, I think when he looks back, he thinks, well, I was just trying to make the right move and stick to my values and do the right thing for the program. I don't think he was trying to hurt the program, but ultimately it did by his lack of decision in those, or his opposite decision in not bringing in transfer guys. Flip your script to this year, he couldn't avoid it. He had so many guys leaving for the NFL, so many guys just leaving to go to different teams. And because of the change in staff to from Wes Goodwin to Tom Allen, guys wanted to leave. And so he couldn't just replace it with more 18-year-olds. It wasn't going to be sustainable, and he understood that. So he did go out, and Tom Allen demanded it, that he go out, get more speed, get more length, and improve the secondary and improve the depth. I believe where the addition is going to play the biggest role is those four guys in the secondary. Elliott Washington from Penn State, obviously, he's got a lot of insiders that have been talking to me through spring have been saying, hey, this guy looks great. He's exactly what you want. He's not making many mistakes. Same thing with Corey Myrick and Jerome Carter. Those guys are as advertised, exactly what they wanted. Now, are they moving up to a different level? Yeah. I mean, Washington, not so much, but Carter and Myrick are moving up to a different level, and hopefully we'll be able to perform at the power forward level. So it's still time will tell on how well they communicate, how well they transfer to this level of football. But Washington, we got a lot of good thoughts on, and even Donovan Starr. He might not be a starter, but we believe that he's going to develop and kind of continue to grow as well. So those four guys from the secondary, desperately needed, must step up, and all early returns from the guys that are on staff or kind of friend of a friend of a friend that's kind of giving me some ideas here, saying, hey, they look pretty good, and they're not at least a disappointment yet. Now, on the flip side, the defensive tackles and the defensive line, we're not hearing that kind of rah-rah speak from the inside. We're hearing more of question marks. Dabo came out day one of his press conference and said, defensive tackle is going to be the biggest problem we have all season. He doesn't normally say that. He doesn't. He's never been that blunt. Now, the question is, was Dabo doing that in order to light a fire, that he believes in them? He actually believes in them. He's trying to light a fire publicly, or was he actually being honest and like saying, hey, these guys aren't really what we wanted? I do believe that the defensive tackle position is going to be a big question mark, and they're going to have to prove it. Vic Burley hasn't been that great. Former 5-star in some outlets, hasn't really been that great. Amari Adams was a 5-star, was a state champion at Florence in South Carolina, high school level, only played 100 snaps. So he's got to step it up. We need these guys that were first-round draft picks that are gone. We need more of them. So they got to step up. They brought in a few transfer portal guys in Strong from Oklahoma, but he didn't really play much in Oklahoma. Berbereja's a JUCO guy. London Merritt's from Colorado, but again, don't really know what we're going to get from that either. So the defensive line desperately needed new faces. They got them, but it's been pretty quiet. So the defensive side of the ball, all those guys got to step up because 95% of the transfer portal picks were from the defensive side of the ball. There was one dude, and that was Chris Johnson Jr. from SMU,
Yeah.
who they recruited heavily, by the way, and C.J. Spiller could not land as a recruit. They finally landed him because he went from Miami to SMU. Now he's at Clemson. And really, C.J. wanted him 3 years ago. But they do believe that, man, he's going to be a big impact. Speedster with Chad Morris, I think that's a good combo there. But they only brought in one guy on the offense, so he's definitely got a hit. If you're only going to have one, you got to have one hit. So for real, I mean, I know I was joking and saying everyone's got a hit, but I mean, as much as they had to replace, I do believe that most of them have to be not just serviceable, but solid, dependable, rotational guys.
I absolutely agree. I remember seeing Vic Burley in high school. He played at Warner Robins. I shook his hand after a game, and I couldn't even see my own. I thought he was a guy that, he's going to be a big-time player, be 3 and out in college. He's been a solid, serviceable player, but he's never reached the level that I thought he would, and he was so dominant in high school. I was surprised by that, coming out of a great program like Warner Robins. And they just churned out so many defensive players out of Georgia. Like, that's their pipeline. They get the Georgia kids that Kirby wants and that Nick wanted and stuff. They beat him for a lot of those kids in Alabama, Georgia, Florida. So we'll see if they can get some of that. My last question for you on the portal, do you think this is going to be the norm now? Like, they took 10 last year, especially if they hit a little bit. Do you think they'll kind of go that route? What do you think the future holds for the portal and the Tigers?
Oh, 100%. I don't think Dabo can go back now. The toothpaste is out of the tube, you know. I would say that the thing is I don't know how much Clemson can compete. And I'm not trying to be negative here. I'm trying to be realistic. In the world of pay for play, which is not what we agreed to, but what we have, Clemson is a smaller market. I wouldn't even say they're a medium market. Clemson doesn't have the Lamborghini of Pickens like Austin, Texas does, like Columbus, Ohio does. And so the thing is that they're going to have to compete in different ways. And the ways of recruiting are not the same, as you know very well. I have a good friend who is a former offensive coordinator, and he said, you're still going to have those guys that want to go to Clemson. And they're going to be the 4-star guys. And you might have every now and then a 5-star guy that truly grew up wearing orange, bleeding orange. But most of those big-time dudes, they're getting so many offers that are changing not only their life, but their entire family's life, that they just can't go to the team that they grew up as a kid liking. They have to go where they're going to be financially beneficial. And so Clemson's got to understand that it's a different world now. And so will Clemson ever get in the top 5 of recruiting again? I don't know. I mean, I truly don't. The market, to me, is not in their favor. However, that will lean into, and I know a lot of people like to make fun or like to be frustrated with Brad Brownell, the basketball coach. But one thing that I look at with Brad Brownell is that, he knows that he can't compete with the Dukes, but he's going to go into transfer portal and find guys that fit his system to an elite level. And man, the last 3 years where they've gone to the NCAA tournament back to back to back, he's gone in the portal and found dudes that maybe Clemson's not their first love, but man, they fit the system exactly how they wanted. And then, maybe they're one and dones, maybe they're two and dones, but most of those guys, they finish and they graduate out and they say, man, Clemson is where I wish I would have started. I love Clemson. And so, where Dabo was worried about the culture, honestly, I don't think is going to be a big problem because he's got that culture and that value system in place. I would encourage Dabo to continue what he's doing, supplement where you're missing from the recruiting world and the recruiting trail, supplement it with the transfer portal. And hey, like Chris Johnson Jr., who cares if you missed on him 2 years ago? Now you got him, take advantage of him.
Absolutely. When we come back, let's get a vibe check. What do the Clemson fans think of the recency of Clemson being more average in the ACC and not dominate? That is next, right here on this crossover. Clemson at 7-6, Morgan. That probably wasn't on your bingo card going into last season. What was, just curiosity, and I didn't even ask you this for the show. What did you think they'd be last year? 10-2, 11-1, something like that?
Oh, you're gonna have to dig up some old takes exposed for me to admit what I said last
Uh
season.
oh.
Jeez,
Uh
I
oh.
mean, I'd probably lose my job if you dug that up. What I actually said, I was pretty confident, to be honest with you. I mean, why wouldn't you be? You were returning. I think Phil Steele said that percentage-wise, the most returners
They
from
did.
one season to another.
They
So
did.
why wouldn't you be extremely excited about those? Again, they finished the season even with a bad season with 9 draft picks, and they were from all over, from not just from the offense, the defense, special. I mean, it was all over the place. So, I mean, third-year offensive coordinator with your third-year quarterback. What? I mean, that is 10 wins written all over it. Uh, you know, and I said 10 wins. I said playoff. So that's what I said. I was not saying 7-6. I wasn't saying losing to Penn State that was beat down. I wasn't saying praying that you beat South Carolina to salvage some sort of happiness, from the season. But that's what it ended up being. And it got kind of frustrating throughout the season just because Dabo, he's his own worst enemy sometimes because while I believe he's a good coach and he's a good guy, he when he gets backed into a corner, he likes to throw his resume at you. Well, when you're seven and
Oh,
six, nobody wants to hear the resume anymore. You know, we're paying him $11 million a year because of what his resume says. And so that should be it. We don't want to hear more about it. We're paying you the money. Okay. They're probably going to build him a statue. Or if he sticks around for long enough, maybe a hologram. They're going to build it. They're going to name something after him. I mean, he's done more than enough to be, cemented in Clemson history forever. And so he's got that level of respect. We don't need, though, his resume. We know what he's done. We're paying him for that. He's got to continue to. It's like what they say in sales. What have you done for me lately? Right? I used to be in marketing, and they would say, at the end of the year, I'd say I sold. I was accountable. I was accountable for $25 million in sales, and you know what they'd say? They'd say, "Well, how are you going to do 40 next year?" So it's what have you done for me lately? It's not all about the past. Now the past will get you your paycheck. So that's where Dabo's got to reset. We don't want to hear that. We want to see what you're going to do lately. He has made some changes. They say that he's stuck in his old ways. Well, he fired Garrett Riley. He hired from within. We hated that. Then he fired from within, and he got Garrett Riley. He got Tom Allen. Now he fired Garrett Riley and brought Chad Morris back in. So he is trying different things. This year, I think he brought in like 14 new staff members a lot of them from the NFL that have decades of experience. So, a lot of the people saying, well, all he does is hire former players. He's actually gone away from that. I mean, he definitely was doing that, and he still has every now and then. But for the most part, he's revamped a lot of his staff with veteran guys from the professional level. So, and even like in this financial world, he's brought in guys that are the former CEOs to come help him out. So I like what he's doing. Former general managers, former coaches, I like what he's doing to try to change things, but it does have to translate to Saturdays. It has to translate to wins because as Dabo says, you can have crap on the floor, but if you're winning, nobody notices it. Nobody smells it. But if you're 7-6, it's like, hey, why aren't you cleaning that up, man? You know what I'm saying? So there's still the same problems. I mean, when you look back when Deshaun Watson was the quarterback, when Trevor Lawrence was the quarterback, they were winning games by 40 points. They still had problems. They still had things that would frustrate you from time to time. It's just they had more good than bad. So Clemson's got to figure that out. But as you mentioned, when it comes to comparison to the ACC, we know that the goal is not to be one of the better teams in the ACC. That is really kind of the floor, So to be fighting to be relevant in the ACC is not acceptable, even under Tommy Bowden or Tommy West or, Danny Ford. I mean, nobody for the past 40 years wants Clemson to just barely fight for relevance in the ACC. That's what they did last season. Everybody demands that Clemson be one of the top dogs with Florida State. So we've got to be up there. Miami, perfectly fine that they're a top dog, but we better be up there as well. We can't be 5th or 6th on the list. Got to be 1 or 2, fighting for that ACC championship, getting in there, making that automatic, and then getting a chance at the playoffs for sure as well. So, again, 7 wins, not going to cut it. 8 wins, really, overtime's not going to cut it. And as you saw with Tommy Bowden, 9 wins consistently, not going to cut it. You got to get up there in the double-digit wins and get into the playoffs because that's what Clemson fans want. And honestly, Dabo built it as well. He's his own problem. He, spoiled us in a lot of ways. And so that standard is now there, and that expectation is now there. So he's going to have to try to keep it going for sure.
If they go 7-5 or 6-6 this year, what kind of outcry is there going to be from the fan base?
I'm not going to say that Dabo would be done because you got to understand, it's a very emotional decision. It's a very difficult decision to get rid of the best coach you've ever had,
True.
You would much rather see him retire. You'd much rather see a Nick Saban scenario where he just steps away, and goes to be with Pat McAfee or something. I don't know. You'd much rather do that than have to fire the best coach you've ever had. So nobody really wants that. Plus, he makes so much money, his buyout would hurt the team. We're already talking about struggling to keep up. I mean, nobody wants to pay 40 million in a buyout. You know what I mean? It's just not. That's just really going to hurt as well. So it's going to take many years to kind of get that buyout down from his previous contract. So I just don't see it happening. But the frustration is definitely still there. It's still what he built. He built a lot of this. He still has a lot of equity built up and a lot of trust to get back there. But I would say after last season, like I said, the grandstanding on the podium with the resume, we want you to fix it, but we don't want to hear that,
That's kind of where I'm at too. I think they need to have either this season or next season a year where they take a jump, where they're going to be boosters stopping the donations for NIL. It's going to get awkward. If it's not this year, it's got to be next. It's one or the other. So we'll see. Thank you very much, Morgan. I appreciate all the insights on what's going on with Clemson football. This should be a very important year for the Tigers and a very interesting one because right now I wouldn't touch their prediction on win-loss with a 10-foot pole. I'm not sure if you even – if you want to now, go ahead and give your prediction. But
yeah, if I did anything, it'd be safe and give me the 8.
Okay, well, that's fair. I think that's pretty normal number. But he is Morgan Thomas. Please tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
Yeah, you can always check me out here on the Locked On Network, Locked On Podcast, Locked On Clemson. Monday through Friday, we always talk Clemson here. And then in between episodes on X at the Morgan T Show.
Appreciate it. You can find the Portal Podcast all the same places you find Locked On Clemson, Spotify, Apple, Podbean, and more. This has been a crossover, Locked On Clemson and the Portal.